You are listening to the Little Psychic Podcast with June Mack, which was formerly known as the Fully Woo Podcast. I hope you enjoy. Hi there, I'm your host June Mack, and you're listening to the Fully Woo Podcast. I'll be talking about all the fun woo-woo things in a down-to-earth, bright, light-hearted and easy to navigate way. Hopefully, I'll be able to help you ignite and light the way on your own spiritual journey and evolution too. In today's episode, I talk about turning psychic, my story, part 2 of 2. It's a continuation of last episode. But today, I'll talk about how I learned to control and enhance my own psychic abilities, what fears and beliefs I had to work through to be able to start my own spiritual business, and how it all began with just trusting my own intuition and how it actually turned out to be the best thing that I've ever done. I really hope you enjoy episode 2. Have you always wondered if maybe you were a little bit psychic? Well, this episode of the Fully Woo Podcast was brought to you by Bloom, my one-on-one psychic development mentoring program. Bloom is a 7-week experience to help you awaken your psychic senses, create a connection with your spirit guides, and enhance your own intuition. It's suitable for beginners, and you can learn more via junemack.com/programs. Hello, and welcome back to episode 2 of the Fully Woo Podcast, your modern day spirituality podcast. If you don't know me, I'm your host, June Mack. I'm a psychic, clairvoyant, intuitive energy healer, and I love to make spirituality easy and fun. I also run straight to the point classes or programs and workshops, online or in person. I love to think that I'm the spark that helps to reignite and develop your intuition. Out of some of my programs, I've had mediums come out or discover they have mediumship abilities, psychics, card readers, or at the very least, you don't have to go in with that intention, obviously. Some people come out and they are just more aligned and in flow with their life. You can check out most of the things I do via junemack.com. But what this episode is about today is how did I get to doing this type of work? What is my story? How did I discover my psychic abilities or turn fully woo? How did I go from a normal job to communicating with spirit for a living? Last week was part 1 of my story about me growing up and experiences with spirits and the abilities that I had. I left you off in episode 1 around the time of my 20s when I was talking about attending a lot of psychic convention and shows. I probably had my first proper reading in my early 20s. So I'll just pick up right where I left off. I remember after going to my first psychic reading, just being completely blown away with the accuracy. And this was around the time of MySpace or when online, social media, what was shared online wasn't so huge. I remember after my reading going and checking online as to what this woman could have possibly previously known about me. And a lot of things that she mentioned, there was absolutely no way she could have found this stuff out from social media. They were completely specific. At the time, I had a dog that had passed away, and she even brought up things that had happened just before he passed, which was literally only myself and my husband were present, or my boyfriend at the time. He was my boyfriend, not my husband yet. And they were things that we had never discussed with anyone because they were too traumatic. And these things were brought up in the reading, not to bring up the trauma, but just to say that our dog who had passed was no longer in pain, and he was thanking us basically for making sure he didn't go through too much pain because he ended up having to be put down. So I just remember being completely in awe of this woman, and I wanted to know how she did it. How did these people do it? I absolutely put them all on a pedestal and thought that they were the chosen ones, or that they just had this thing that only rare people possess. I have since recently changed my opinions. I do believe we are all born with these abilities to some degree. It's just a matter of re-tapping into them sometimes for people who may have forgotten how to use these abilities or shut them down. I do believe it is our own birthright to be able to use these abilities, and that we are all connected, and I believe we are meant to use these abilities in our day-to-day life. We just kind of forget how to do it. So I guess going back to my story, I went through my early 20s or my 20s and early 30s, dabbling in and out of spirituality and having abilities, but not really knowing what to do with them. They'd be strong at times, and then at other points they'd drift away. And sometimes I'd feel like they'd completely gone. I might go through a large period of time where I would get nothing would happen. So fast forward, I guess, to 2020, just pre-pandemic. At this point, I was working as a first aid instructor, so I had my own business as a subcontractor, teaching people first aid, and my husband had a coffee van at this point. We still do have a coffee van at this point of the recording. We'd run a range of small businesses up until now. We'd run cafes. I'd run my own personal assistant business. I had run resume workshops and programs helping people to find work because I used to have a background in HR. So we'd run quite a few things on our own, but we'd sort of rearranged our priorities because after running the cafe and basically working 7 days a week, we realized that's not what we wanted, and we wanted to be able to spend more time together and enjoy life with our family, with our young family. However, somehow, even though we'd completely rearranged our life, sold the cafe, got the coffee van, ended up subcontracted working in first aid so that we could fit our life around our work rather than, is that the right way to say it? You know what I mean? Rather than arrange life around our work. No. You know what I mean. Somehow, after all this real-life shuffling, trying to get our priorities straight, which is really having the time together and having time to enjoy life, we'd ended up back in the fast lane, which is so easy to do. I'd had our second daughter in 2019, and I went back to work when she was 6 weeks old because I love work so much and what it was that I was doing. I love being around people, and being able to teach really is a thing that I'm so passionate about. But early 2020, things were insane. My husband's business was quite new, so he was still trying to establish his coffee van. The time that we wanted together was sort of out the window. I actually remember him coming home from the coffee van, and he would come home around 11:30, 12, and I'd be with the baby because our older daughter was at school, and she'd be in bed. It was nap time when he'd come home, and I literally remember, because I'd arranged my work around his, obviously, him coming down the driveway with the coffee van, me running up the driveway with the baby monitor to pass to him through the window because we had no time to even chat for a second, run to the car, and then drive straight off to my work and go and do what it is that I had to do, to go and teach first aid class. Or I also worked in the training organization's office for a little while too. So life was just completely crazy. He would come home from work, I'd go to work, or vice versa, and we didn't have much time together at all. I would work the nights, he would work the mornings, and I'd work the afternoons. And you sort of get so used to living life like this in the fast lane, you don't even notice that it's really passing us by, and we aren't truly living and doing everything that we want to do because we get so caught up in this is just the way it is. And I was just too busy to hear spirit or myself or even know what it is that I desired. Like, I thought I was happy, and I was happy, but not to the degree that I am now, I guess. So 2020 happened. I don't even need to explain myself there as to what happened with the pandemic and everything. And like so many other people, we were forced to slow down. We were forced to stop. My business completely stopped. I wasn't allowed to run classes. I wasn't allowed to teach first aid. My business went to nothing. And my husband lost all of his events. At that point in time, we were reliant on big events and working these events, and obviously all the events stopped. So he just had his daily trade. Us and so many other small businesses were completely shattered at this time. We just had the rug pulled out from under us, and we were forced to slow down. Although we were worried, financially, we were a little bit, of course, concerned. We knew that we had each other, which is the most important thing, really, and that we were all healthy and we were all together. And we still knew that really takes precedence over everything else. As long as we were together and healthy, then that's fine. We can be happy. We'd been in financial difficulties before. Before buying the coffee van, we had put a lot on the line to be able to start up the coffee van. And although we were wrapped up in the busy, we knew what was most important. And yeah, as long as we were together, that was fine. So around the time that we were all forced to slow down and basically gone from this crazy swapping over, running up and down the driveway with a baby monitor to a nothing, like a being at home with the children, obviously my mind was forced to slow down. And during this time, because I was forced to slow down, the spirit messages were able to finally get through, and they began to flow. And all of a sudden, I was inundated with ideas, or what I like to call downloads, which I believe they come from a higher source. At the time, I thought that they were just my ideas and I was super, super smart. Turns out I'm not that smart. It's spirit that had the ideas that they were sending through. And I was literally writing out pages and pages of just all these little business ideas that I didn't even know what it was that I was bringing together. And it all started flowing out of me. And it was like something I'd never experienced before. And that is when my business that I started running simultaneously as the first aid business that I had. It was called Community Collabs at the time, which basically, it wasn't really a business to begin with. It was more, I just knew that I wanted to help people. And especially the thing going on with small businesses, I started showcasing small businesses via online socials to shout them out and, keep them in the forefront of people's minds for when things did start to open up again. And I didn't really know what it was. I guess, even if you don't know what the end goal is or why you're doing it, sometimes you just need to take that leap. Just start. Because if you don't start, then the rest of it's not going to make sense or not going to come through. It's such a human thing to do, which I even do as well, is like, well, what's the end game then? What is the point of this? But a lot of the time, spirit only give it to us one piece at a time. So it's like, if you don't do that first little inkling or follow that first niggle that is there, how are you supposed to get the rest of it? Or they're not going to give you the rest of it to figure out what's next. You have to take that first step. So that's exactly what I did. I took that first step and I started doing this really with the intention of not to make any money out of it. It was just to give back. I was passionate about it. It filled my cup. It made me feel like I was doing something worthwhile. And you just have to sometimes trust and leap and complete what it is that you've got in your head and then repeat. It's like over and over again, you're trusting, you're leaping, completing, and then doing it again each time every new idea comes in. It started as a business supporting other businesses, and then I ended up in business coaching. So the next thing that came through was helping other people who were starting their own small businesses, because this was a time that people were started to realize what is important in life. Why have I been working this job for so long that I don't like? So this happened to a lot of people in 2020. They're like, I've always wanted to start my first small business. Why don't I just go ahead and do it? I've got the time now. And all these amazing businesses were born. So I started business mentoring, and because of this, so community collabs, it was helping other small businesses in more than one way. It started out just literally shouting out other businesses for free, and then it was like helping other people start their own small businesses. And from this, I joined a mastermind with other soul-led women in business that were in it. And when I say soul-led, these are just business women or business people that run their business from their heart. They run it from a place of passion. They don't necessarily start the business because, this is the smart thing to do, and, you can make a lot of money from this. And a lot of people run their businesses like that because they're like, this is a smart idea and this is what I'm going to do, and I want to make loads of money, and that is totally fine. But a soul-led person in business is someone who started it because this is what they love to do. And for me, that's exactly what I was doing. I didn't know how I was going to make money from it. I didn't even have the intention of that to begin with. That's just how I started. And while all of this was going on, like I was getting into this new, soul-led communities and meeting all these new people, things were continuing to happen, and I was changing a lot spiritually. I was waking up in the night, seeing clear as day, clairvoyant images in front of me. So actually, when I say clairvoyant images, usually I would see things in my mind's eye. So, when you imagine something, that's now how I usually see my clairvoyant images. But I was actually opening my eyes in the middle of the night and seeing full-bodied images in front of my eyes. So I still do in the middle of the night sometimes, but this happens to me now, but back then it had never really happened like this, like images of flowers or wheat growing or symbols or what are they called? Asymmetric shapes or colors just floating around in front of me. And I had no idea what any of this meant. I was waking up with somebody standing next to my bed sometimes, like a physical person, which I knew wasn't a physical person. It scared me, but it didn't feel of any ill intent. It just felt like they were there. And looking back, I do believe now this was my spirit guides trying to wake me up. They were like calling me home. They were trying to tell me it was time for me to start my real work in the world. And this was their way of spurring me on to get me to do something about it, because I was like, I don't understand any of this stuff. Who can teach me to understand what is happening? I need someone to teach me because it's happening whether I like it or not. These things are happening. So while all this was going on, I really tried the business mentoring thing. I ran small business courses. I coached people one-on-one. It made sense. Like, it just seems like the smart thing to do because of my background in running small businesses, on my own or with my husband. I just thought, okay, this is it. This is my thing. We're always looking for our thing. What's our thing that we're meant to do? I thought this was my thing. I really thought it was. I had a few clients, but it was never anything crazy. It was very inconsistent. It never fully took off. There were times or periods when I would not have any business at all. And then sometimes I'd have a few, but it kept me going for the meantime. And I was juggling, as 2020, 2021, things were opening and closing. So it was like I was juggling community collabs and first aid at the same time. And I juggled for quite a long time until finally it didn't feel right to be in my first aid business anymore, only because I absolutely loved that time, but it wasn't lighting me up anymore. And I'm a big believer if something is not lighting you up and it doesn't feel good and you're dreading doing it or going there, then why are you still doing it? Unless, of course, I totally understand if you've got, financial reasons that you have to stay, but I didn't. And it's not that like I didn't take a leap, because I definitely did. I wasn't making enough money in Community Collabs to keep us going, but we had some savings there. So I thought, worst case scenario, I need to give this a go, because if I don't, then I'm going to end up regretting this. I need to put my 100% into this business, because I don't want to have any regrets. We're not here on earth for long enough in this body to have time to have regrets. So I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work, I've got my savings there. And if they dwindle too much, I'll just find another job. It's not a big deal. I know I'll be able to find another job, but I know that I need to try this. I just had that inner feeling that this is something I need to do. So while I was continuing to business coach, I just kept being drawn to this spiritual side of things, all without ever realizing or ever imagining or thinking I'd end up, working as a spiritual entrepreneur or a light worker or reading for people. I never imagined that would happen. I just kept being drawn to, and I started somehow kind of even mixing or weaving it into my business mentoring, the spiritual side of myself. And it didn't make any sense, but I just felt it in my heart. So I just kept going, and it sort of ended up weaving together. And I just kept on picking up those breadcrumbs or those next signs that is the next thing I should be doing. And it got to a point where I stopped taking notice of other people's opinions so much. I went against what people were telling me I should be doing, which is, I really wanted to the whole time run my business under June Mack, because as a business, you start somewhere and it usually ends up somewhere else. Like, it completely evolves and changes over time. And I knew that was going to happen with myself. And I'm still always changing. So the name, to have that business name, for me didn't make any sense, because I knew that I was going to change what it was that I was doing. And So people were telling me, no, you shouldn't have your name as your business name. And I decided, I listened to them to begin with. But when I stopped looking at what everybody else was doing, and, I used to look at other people's posts for inspiration. I used to check out their website for inspiration. And, it's not saying that I still don't. Like, sometimes I'll read someone else's post and that will give me, I'm just like, wow, that is amazing. That person's so good. That's inspired me, to do something else or this or that. I still do that, but not to the degree where I would purposely go and how did this person do it? And how does their Instagram feed look? And, oh, look, they've done, their tiles in order or blah, blah, blah. And I was looking at things like that and comparing myself. And as soon as I stopped taking notice of other people or stopped taking on opinions that didn't feel right for me, of course I love listening to other people's advice, but if it didn't feel right for me, now I just, thank you for that information and disregard it and continue doing what feels good, what feels right for me, because everyone's different. Just because that worked for you, we're totally different, doesn't mean that's going to work for me. And I started this, so I had my business mentoring, but I started this spiritual group on the side, which is now the Enchantress Circle, which is my free Facebook group. And it absolutely made no sense. A business coach or a business mentor who was also starting this spiritual group of people who were just getting into spirituality and wanted to learn more. I wanted it to be a safe space for people to come and be able to be open, and a safe area, because not everybody has friends or family that's into this stuff. And if they want to learn, I wanted it to be a safe space to learn. Didn't make any sense, but I did it anyway because it felt good. I started my first ever, so this is going back again, intuition workshop, or like learning into spirituality, around mid 2020. So that was my first sort of thing that I did to help me with my own spiritual awakening, to help me like get my stuff together and actually figure out, how to use the abilities, or how to control what was coming in, or understand what was coming in. And the plan was to do this intuition workshop just for me. This was to help me with my business mentoring. And I remember, just to help me learn how to control and stop the spirits from standing over my bed at night. And I remember talking to my husband about it, like, what do you think about me doing this? And I was talking to him about it because the first one I did wasn't so expensive, but then it was like I got hooked. The next one that I did was quite expensive, and it was an intensive 3-month program. And I said to my husband, this is a lot of money for us, especially where we are financially at the moment. What are your thoughts? Is this okay for me to do this? It was a really big spiritual expansion workshop, basically, or program. And he said that he just got goosebumps over his whole entire body. And he's like, something is just telling me that you have to do this. This is for you. This really excites me. And I decided to do it. And since that first workshop and then the program, I never stopped. From that time in early 2020, I ended up doing one workshop or program, one after another, up until now. So I've done psychic development, mediumship development, energetic healing development, programs, Reiki, more intuition programs and workshops, I even did a sound bowl class or master class, a bunch of classes. I made all these amazing connections through my group in the Enchantress Circle. And I slowly learnt, how to connect to my guides properly. I started meditating and realizing that I could ask my guides something and they would answer me. I started learning about automatic writing and how your guides always just want to help. And they were visiting me in dreams, in my automatic writing. There were signs everywhere. Crazy things were going on. And this connection that I started building or getting deeper and deeper into with my guides was the most amazing thing I've ever felt. And this was the most amazing, magical time of my life, learning how to reopen and understand these gifts that we are, or abilities that we are all born with, but we just forget how to use them. We're not taught how to use them like we're taught how to use our motor skills, or develop when you're growing up. Make sure you develop, that you're hearing properly. This stuff is always being checked on. Your sense of your sensory, skills. All of that is constantly being taught, but that is why the rest of it sort of falls at the wayside. And you might as a young kid, used to see things, and then that gets shut down, or you didn't really see that, or we don't talk about it, or that's not right, or that's scary, and then they go away. But this time, being able to reconnect, it almost feels like being reconnected with back home. It still is the most amazing, magical time of my life. Things are constantly unfolding and changing, and you receive upgrades in your abilities every time you take a leap. And this world of just love and just pure light, it's indescribable. This world that I was introduced to, this feeling of contentment and wholeness you get when you are connecting, it really is indescribable. I can't even put it into words. But, going back after a few months of learning how to use these abilities to my advantage, and sort of understanding how they work, the more you trust in yourself, the stronger it gets. It just continues to evolve from there. The biggest challenges, I guess, during this time or during this learning were being afraid of what I might see. And I do find now that I'm mentoring other people in awakening their own psychic senses that a lot of people are afraid of what they might see, or they might see something scary. But I didn't realize it was just as easy as setting boundaries with your spirit guides. Like, hey, I didn't like it how that person was standing over my bed in the middle of the night. Can you please make sure that that doesn't happen again? Or do not visit me, please, while I'm sleeping. Only when I am intentionally, opening up to connect with you. And sometimes I usually don't mind them bothering me in the middle of the night, but sometimes it gets too many times in one night. And I'll literally roll over and I'm like, oh, there's something else there, something else floating around. You've woken me up too many times tonight. Can you please go away and come back tomorrow when I start work? And they do. They always go back. It's just a matter of, they always go away. It's always just a matter of being very strong in your boundaries. And another challenge I had was the self-doubts of like, am I literally losing my mind? What is real and what is not? Is this seriously really happening? Because the human logical part of your brain goes, how is this real? But too many things were happening that proof would follow that what you thought about this person, or that weird feeling that you had that this has happened to them, and then they were confirming that that is exactly what happened in my life, especially once I started doing readings, but that's jumping ahead. The proof was just there. And I would sometimes see things about my own spirit guides and then see another intuitive person, and they would just go and confirm exactly what it was that I saw. So how can we have the exact same random thing pop in? It just didn't make any sense. It was all proof. And I am, as much as I am spiritual, I like science. I like proof. You are never going to get 100% proof working in the spiritual world, like as in scientific proof, because science cannot measure what it is that we are connecting with at this point. That they are getting there, but those own confirmations that you get within yourself, it just builds the trust. It's just a matter of getting past that. I always say, if you see it, believe that it happened, and the more that you just believe in, the more that you trust, the more that it opens up. So there was the self-doubt was another challenge as well. Obviously, in the beginning, being afraid of what I might see, but you can change that. And I only have amazing experiences. Like at this point, I only have the most beautiful, amazing experiences with spirit. I was sort of going through all this and continuing to meditate and connect. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it though. And I had this inkling or one of the other breadcrumbs that was dropped was, you need to start doing readings. But I was like, how? I don't even know where to start or how to do that. But I feel like I could read people. And I saw another intuitive woman, or I had another mini reading with somebody else who's a psychic as well. And she said, okay, your spirit guides love it how you're meditating and connecting with them and doing automatic writing, and they love it, but you are ready to read other people. You're ready to do so much more than what it is you were doing right now. And I was in shock, but at the same time, obviously I'd had that feeling. That was the intuitive feeling that I had. And I sat with that for a while. Like, oh my gosh, am I really ready to do this? Because that is a massive life change. And more of my challenges here, and one of my biggest fears was judgment of stepping out of that spiritual closet. That was a very scary thing for me to deal with. I had the fear of what people were going to think. Like, obviously there are so many people that don't believe in this at all, that are going to think that what I do is a load of BS. And that is completely fine. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but that still scared the crap out of me. I had a fear as well, this irrational fear that I was going to change too much and just become this super weird, non-relatable in the slightest person who wasn't capable of being normal. Like, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, that I was going to start going to the shops in like a magician's cloth or cloak or something. I don't know what I thought. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to turn into one of those people that lies in the dirt naked or bathes in blood under the full moon. Like, I had all these crazy thoughts and images, and I thought that I was going to lose all of my friends and no one's going to like you anymore because you're just going to be so weird. And it took me a while to realize that if you don't want to go to the shops in a magician's cloak, you don't have to. If you want to, I'm all for that. Go for it. You can choose what it is that you want to keep about yourself and what you want to take with you. And life is about changing and growing. This is why we're here. Like, I can still be me. I can still be funny. I thought I was going to that sounds really like myself when I think I'm funny. But I have a sense of humor and I like to talk about silly things. I'm not always serious. I like to, talk about the Kardashians, or I love the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Am I going to be spiritual and not like these things anymore? That's exactly the silly fears that I had. And I know now that you can take all of that with you and still bring on the new knowledge and new awakenings and still be you. Like, I can still see someone fall over and accidentally laugh. Like, I'm still faulted, as long as they're not hurt, like I'm still faulted and laugh at ridiculous things like that. I can still laugh at myself and still, turn on my chakras, do all the spiritual woo-woo things. But I still get to be me as well. And if I do lose friends or family members even, and they can't embrace who you are because now you've changed, that's okay too. And that was probably one of the hardest things to be okay with, is that, we are here to actually grow and change and continually learn. Even if you're not going down the spiritual path, sometimes you change in ways and you still lose friends. So it's not because, if you do, this is why we're here on earth. It's our purpose of being here on this earth school. Or my dad used to call it, this is why we're playing this game. He used to call it the human game or earth's game. We're here to grow and to learn and to change. And if there's people that can't accept who you're turning into, then they're unfortunately not meant to be in your life. And sometimes, you shine too brightly for other people, or sometimes they're going in one direction and you're going in the complete opposite. And sometimes that happens. And sometimes they just don't understand. And people will often get triggered by what they don't understand. And that's okay too. It's got nothing to do with you. As long as you're a good person and, you want to help people, if that's their perception of you, then that's actually their issue. All you can do is, wish them well. And unfortunately, sometimes you need to sever those ties, because we are here to live a life that fulfills ourselves. We're not here to live for others, and we're living a life for us, and we want to be happy in ourselves. And living a life in the fear of judgment of other people, that is not a life properly lived. The judgment that is the most important really is the judgment of who you are as a person, and your own judgment of yourself. We're never going to be truly happy if we're doing things in the fear of others. And, this is your path, it's not theirs. And just keep doing your thing and keep going. And you don't have to think, ill of anybody that thinks ill of you. I don't. I'm sure there's people out there that talk behind my back, absolutely, for what it is that I do. And I have to be okay with that, because no matter what you do, there's probably going to be someone talking behind your back about it. It's like, I had a friend once who said, I think my nephew's gay and I love him regardless, but I don't want him to be gay just because I feel bad for him because he's probably going to get teased. And I kind of said to him, you know what? I got teased for being Asian in primary school. Did you get teased? And he's like, yeah, I got teased because I was smart. And this other person got teased. And I said, well, another friend that I had got teased because they were overweight. Somebody else got teased for having curly hair. Children are cruel. Sometimes you get teased no matter what it is. Someone's going to find something in you to tease you about. And no matter whether he's gay or not, if he's not gay, he might get teased for something else. So it's just, it's just something that sometimes we make things so much worse in our heads too. And, in the scheme of things, even if you're living in the fear of what other people might think, especially sometimes you live in the fear of failure, of what if I fail? What is everybody going to think? Honestly, we are probably the tiniest blip in their existence of whatever's going on in their lives. It's just that we make things so much worse or bigger in our heads sometimes. Like, I was sure at one point that there was a I Hate June Mac club. Like, there still might be. But I eventually got past this and worked past that just by believing that I need to do what I need to do and follow my own path. And I actually had like a little spiritual coming out video that I did when I was still Community Collabs. And I just remember, talking in this video about my spirituality and sweating. My teeth were so dry. I was so nervous. It felt wrong to talk about, I did this because Spirit said so. It just felt so strange. But from that first video, I just kept going. And the more I did it, the more easily it flowed. And I still am careful in everyday life. I still have hang-ups when I tell people what it is that I do, but I'm not going to hold back, anymore. I'm afraid of, I'm not afraid, I don't want to conform or change who I am anymore because I'm afraid of what other people will think. And sometimes I think people are afraid to ask me questions. Sometimes I say what it is that I do and it's just met with absolute silence. And, that's okay. And sometimes I wonder if it's whether because they just don't know anything about it and they don't know what to say. But I wish that people would start asking questions. I like it when people start asking questions. But anyway, going back to my story, I started doing in the closet readings. I actually started reading for people but not telling anybody or putting it on the front line, and that's what it was that I was doing. And I remember after doing my first reading, in the closet reading, and I just remember bawling and crying after it because it was so amazing. And what I said resonated with the person and they were so changed and astounded at what came through. It felt so good to have that confirmation and that, oh my gosh, I actually can do this. I actually am doing it. I had never felt more alive, exhilarated, inspired, happy, content. I just knew that I was born to do this. And the confirmations and the changes made for the other person, they are addictive. And I still feel that way after readings. Like when you do a good reading and the person is clearly changed or it puts them back onto their right path, it's the most addictive, amazing feeling ever. So I just know that this is what I'm meant to do. And once I started, working through those fears and things that whatever had me hung up and started trusting more and taking the leaps and the jumps and picking up those crumbs that were left for me, my whole life changed and completely turned on its head for the absolute better of my life. Like things took off so much faster when I started doing readings as June Mack, like when I was finally brave enough to stop doing in the closet readings and come out. Things took off faster than anything I'd ever done before, and I truly believe that Spirit was rewarding me for my bravery and the courage that it took. It's like said quickly now, but it was months and months, of in the closet readings or preparation and working through my own issues and giving people like guidance readings and giving people hope and belief in themselves and putting them back on their paths. It's just the most amazing thing. And it's now evolved into teaching others how to do it too, and to teach other people to become back in aligned with their own intuition or that sense that we all have, and realizing that there's easy ways that you can turn it on and you can turn it off. And for me, it started with my connection with my spirit guides, and spirituality or intuition or psychic senses or abilities, they don't have to be hard. There's so many false, things going around out there, which totally is a whole nother episode again. But you can absolutely change your life too. You don't have to be a light worker or do readings for other people or teach other people how to do this. But when you live your life from your heart and just do things because that is what feels good for you and not because this is what society says or other people say you should be doing, and not live so much dictated by your own head or logical ways of thinking, intuition will always improve your life. I have never felt so happy and content in doing what it is that I'm doing, and I just know that I am meant to do this. The possibility and the fear around ridicule and failure, it's all been worth it so far. So that is basically how I got here. And it has been the best thing that I've absolutely ever done. Starting with just connecting with my intuition, it's got me back on to my true life path. by slowing down and giving time for those, the connection to be made and those messages to come through. So I wanted to say thank you so much for listening. Next episode, I will not so much be talking about me and my story will go on. But thank you for listening. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook or on YouTube. All the links are in the show notes. And I'll hope you'll join me for some more down-to-earth spirituality and more fun woo-woo stuff in episode 3. See you later. I'm June Mack, and I wanted to thank you for tuning in to the Fully Woo podcast. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have had you here. You can find me over at junemack.com or on all social media as Ms. June Mack. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much if you could please subscribe, rate, review, and share. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a privilege to be in your ears.